In your experience right now, you can assess, what is it that's fabricated? What is it that is extra? What is added on to the basic experiencing? What is added on to the basic sense of being? What is added on or fabricated on top of the basic sense of being conscious? Perhaps the basic sense of being aware. What is it that's fabricated? What is it that's created? What is it that is extrapolated through memory, through conditioned belief systems? Investigating this is hugely valuable, and it's actually rather easy. Just take inventory of your experience right now. What is happening? You have 6 places to look, essentially, 5 sense fields, and the field of consciousness or thought. Before we wake up, and for some time after we wake up, most of our attention in life is spent in the space of thought in a very specific way. Specifically, we are in a kind of relationship with thought. And it's a sort of relationship that allows us to go unconscious in a sense. Unconscious meaning we can actually become quite distanced from the experience of the senses, the sensations of the body, the sensations of sound around us, and so forth. It's almost as if we're watching an internal movie. Many people can relate to this. And some people don't have a visual internal movie screen. Like, you can't really visualize things, but you may have an ongoing narrative running that's telling a story of you, but it's in your voice. It feels like you're the one telling the story. It feels like you're the one that's commenting on experience. It feels like you're the one that's judging all of it. Judging yourself, judging your thoughts, judging your emotions, judging other people, judging situations. And that is the typical way the mind operates for most people. And it's also where attention is bound. It's where the feeling of identity arises. And it's all fabricated. So if you get interested in what fabrication looks like, feels like, how it's experienced, that can be a very good practice, a very good approach to inquiry into the nature of experience, inquiry into the nature of identity, inquiry into the nature of truth. So again, I asked the basic question, what in your experience right now is fabricated? You can ask it the other way. What is in my experience right now that is not fabricated? Where does that take you? I don't mean somewhere else. It's not going to take you somewhere else. There is nowhere else. But where does that take you experientially? Do you feel it dropping? Do you feel things get very quiet, very close? Do the sounds get more clear? The humming in the ears? The ambient sounds in the room, does that become more clear when you orient to that which is not fabricated? Now, understand, when I talk in this way, it's very easy for the mind to get revved up and say, well, sound is fabricated because I have an ear and a hearing apparatus and a brain. Okay, understand, your primary experience, if that's happening for you, is thought. Those are thoughts, right? So what happens when we notice as our primary experience or our primary point of attention in the moment when we notice it's thought? Well, it's great. Look at the nature of thought. Is thought fabricated? What is it fabricated out of? What is the raw material of thought? You don't have to label it. I could call it consciousness. I could call it unbound consciousness. I could call it consciousness not bound on an object of thinking, nor bound from the point of view of a subject. But I wouldn't necessarily suggest you think about it. I would rather you just look, touch into it. What is that one thought made out of? How do you even know it's there? How can you know one thought is there? Can you? How is that one thought any different than, say, a sound or a sensation? Notice And notice where you're noticing from. Are you noticing from somewhere else? Are you somewhere else experiencing a thought as an object? Or is the I thought that I just pointed to simply the next thought? What if you stop with the I thought? What if you stop with the I experience or the being experience purely? Or just conscious? Can you stop with just that conscious experience and notice it has no limitations, no edges? It's primary to each and every thought. The substance of thought is primary to the content of thought. So when you see that you're not noticing a thought from somewhere, the experience of being you is a thought. And there's no outside of that thought, experientially. And you can just stop there, rest there. Rest without creating another thought. Rest without fabricating anything. You learn the feeling of non-fabrication. You learn the experience of not fabricating. Don't take another step. Don't take a forward step. And you don't even have to take a backward step. Don't take either step. What's between the forward step and the backward step? What's between the subject and the object? Don't make conclusions. Ask the question and dive into the question. Don't even expect an answer. Don't try to answer it. Don't force an answer. That's the gap, let's say, between subject-object. You can be free from the extremes of fabrication and dissociation, subject and object. The first step is to see that they're extremes. It's uncomfortable to be mind identified, thought identified, ongoing. And it's also uncomfortable to push thoughts away, to dissociate. So don't do either. Just stop. Stop moving in relation to thought. Stop believing that you are someone aware of thoughts. By looking directly at what's actually happening, what's actually occurring. And that's the beauty of it, is the laboratory for this is you, your own experience. You don't need anything I know. You don't need any doctrine. You don't need any practice per se, because this is the core practice. The core insight practice is to trust the instinct you have to examine your own experience and see what's actually there and what's actually not there, what's being fabricated and what it is that can't be fabricated. But don't make conclusions. Step into the gap and realize the gap is all of this. The gap between, let's say, being and becoming, that gap itself is a conduit to unfiltered experience, unconditioned experience, which is impossible to discuss. It's impossible to talk about. It's impossible. But it's not impossible to allow it to reveal itself. That's all we're doing. But to do that, we really do have to break the spell of thought identification, because it's very sticky, has a lot of momentum to it. So this is where practice comes in. This is where koans come in. This is where inquiry comes in, and on and on. But regardless of how you practice, whether it's through meditation or jhanas or inquiry or koans or one-pointed approach, regardless of any of those, at some point you have to go full on instinct, letting go of all pasts, everything you've learned about spirituality, everything you think you know about yourself and the life you're living and the people you know, like just let go of all of that here, right now. Meaning don't reference the past, don't reference thought, don't reference a view. And you'll know what's not fabricated. And you won't even have to go, aha. It's too clear for an aha moment. It's not a moment. You won't have to label it. It's impossible to label it anyway, so there's no need to. It's an attunement. It's a direct insight. And that's all I ever point to. It is funny, occasionally I'll have a comment saying, do you have a list of your most direct pointing videos? And it's like, no, I'm always pointing directly. Even if I'm pointing from the relative, because the relative is the absolute. So I'm always pointing. Because there's nothing else than this. There's no other possibility than this. So there's nothing else that can be pointed to. Yeah.